Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about something again that I've talked about before, but it's something that has very special and quite substantial significance in relationships. And that is the idea of investment bias, which is the kind of bias, the more you put into a thing, the more you want to see it succeed. Yeah, and it's a bias that is very much kind of focused in or based in emotion, and so it's a case of as I think I gave the example in my more general video on this, with Counter-Strike map packs. I think it was No, it wasn't. Sorry, it was Call of Duty. Call of Duty map packs. At one point, they started putting out these packs for free, and there was an awful lot of kind of complaining about them because they didn't get because people didn't get what they wanted, or they felt that because it was free there wasn't enough there, and as tiny updates, tiny maps, it wasn't good enough, blah blah blah. And as a result, you had the publishers, I believe Activision, putting on £5 price tag to the next set of map packs that they put out, and as a result, because people had invested in it, it had to be good, right? They had to justify their money being put into it, and as a result, this is the negative feedback that they got dropped hugely. And this happens in relationships a lot, and it's one of these things where you will put something into a relationship, your time, your emotional investment, your energy, your money, your whatever, and you'll want it to succeed. Yeah, and when you've got two people on both sides of a relationship being equally invested, you're both putting stuff in, you're both getting stuff out, you're both wanting to see it succeed, and you're both enjoying the fact that it is succeeding just through the continued input from both sides, it all works out wonderfully. And investment bias isn't really as much of a problem, because it's not so much a bias, because yeah, you're investing, but you're succeeding, you're getting a lot out of it. But the problem is that investment bias is one of the biggest problems for bad or harmful relationships. It's the way that these relationships, those negative relationships, are maintained. How many kind of victims of abuse, or people who have been in really shitty situations in relationships where, I don't know, their girlfriend kicked all of their stuff out onto the front lawn after a fight, and as a result, it became they came back together again afterwards, and everything was fine. And even though there was that huge blowout over potentially nothing, you'll still have the guy going, oh yeah, we worked it out and it was fine in the end, and whatever to keep her happy. I mean, it was my fault, really, when it may very well not have been. Or in regards to the girl, the kind of stereotypical girl who has had her boyfriend steal from her, or cheat on her, or anything like that, and then they've come back together, and she's like, well, he still loves me, he's always loved me, and I, and whatever else, even though his actions kind of suggest the opposite. And as a result, that investment bias, that emotional kind of focus on these things, and the way that they're interacted with, it causes a lot of problems for people, because they are blind just through the amount of stuff that they've put in, and the amount that they want to see it do well. They become blind to the negatives. It's like the thing that I would suggest to one degree or another is, you don't need 100% parity in a relationship, but what you do need is at least some kind of even contribution and investment on both sides. And that investment can be in different ways. One person could put an awful lot of time into it, and the other person could put an awful lot of money into it. But obviously, and that's probably more of the happier relationships that occurred in previous generations where you had like a housewife and a working husband, and he would put an awful lot more in the way of money and investment in material ways, and she would put in an awful lot more time and maybe effort into keeping their home, you know. So you don't necessarily need it to be in the same ways. Obviously, if it is in the same ways, then it allows for pretty much 100% parity across both sides of the relationship, and it can work out well. But it doesn't have to be that way. But when you've got no contribution on one side at all and only taking, and the other person is only giving because that's all they can do to try and keep things going, you know, it leads me on to say, kind of, you need to take a step back with these things. You need to, as I said with my more general investment bias video, you need to be aware of what's good for you in the past might not be good for you in the now, and you need to continually appraise and realize that. And I'm not saying pick your relationship to pieces or anything like that, but you know, relationships and circumstances do change over time, and you need to be aware of what's happening then is not what's happening now, and that as a result might lead to other changes down the line. And so, you know, you need to be aware of the contributions on both sides. You need to be aware of your biases, and you need to make sure that you're not being used. You need to, as said, take responsibility for yourself, draw those boundaries, make sure that you know kind of what's on you and what's on them, because, you know, it sucks when you've got those manipulative people out there who will just take and take and take, or make it all your fault when something goes wrong, purely because they're playing on your investment bias towards this relationship that is only succeeding in your mind. It's, you know, one of these horrible things. Places that you can gain some of that perspective, you know, questions you can ask yourself are kind of, what is it that makes me think that this is successful? You know, write a list. You know, what is it that I'm getting out of this? What is it that I feel that they're getting out of it? You know, you have to have that appreciation, because as with respect, where I was saying that that's a currency, you know, your emotional investment in things, it's the same kind of currency being thrown around. There has to be an input from both sides for both sides to get something then back out of it. If one person is filling up the pot with their currency and all it's happening to it is it's being taken by the other person, you know, it still means that if the relationship is this pot in the middle, it still ends up, you know, completely empty. So just something to keep in mind and to think about when moving forward, especially for longer term relationships. Obviously these emotional investments and things like that, and time investments and so on, probably don't happen so much in short term relationships, purely because you don't have the time to get invested. But as said, just something to keep in mind, guys. Anyway, please let me know what you guys think. What have you experienced in regards to this? Have you had friends, or have you yourself gone through these relationships where you have been blind to the negatives purely because of what you have put into it and how you want things to go? You know, if you have been through that, there are probably other people going through that as well. If you can leave, you know, your comments, your experiences, your thoughts down in the comments, then there's a good chance that someone else may learn from those, pick up those things, and maybe even join the conversation as well, just to have that sharing of ideas for the greater good overall, of just people having a greater understanding of what these biases are and what they can do to you. But otherwise, if you found this interesting, if it gave you something to think about, then please drop me a like, and otherwise please subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next video tomorrow. Take care, guys.